You think you know San Francisco, the fog, the tech billionaires, the sourdough. But here is the thing. Most of what you think you know about this city is only the surface. Underneath it is a stranger story. A city built by immigrants, miners, and people with nothing to lose. A place so new, so chaotic, so full of friction that it kept producing things the rest of the world wasn't ready for. This is what San Francisco actually gave the world, and why the real story is far more interesting than the cliché. Let's start with something you have worn, or your parents have worn, or your grandparents wore while working in a field or a factory or a Saturday morning in the backyard. Blue jeans. Most people assume jeans are a timeless American thing. Cowboy country, frontier spirit, no specific origin. That assumption is wrong. Levi Strauss was a German Jewish immigrant who arrived in San Francisco in 1853 during the tail end of the gold rush. He was selling dry goods, fabric, thread, canvas, nothing glamorous. The miners around him needed tough, practical clothing, and the pants they had kept falling apart. Pockets tore, seams split. The work was too hard for the clothes they had. Then, in 1872, a tailor in Nevada named Jacob Davis wrote Strauss a letter. Davis had figured out that if you reinforced the stress points of a pair of pants, the pocket corners, the base of the fly, with small copper rivets, they lasted much longer. He had already made a few pairs for local customers. They worked, but he didn't have the money to file a patent himself. So he wrote to Strauss and proposed a partnership. Strauss said yes. On May 20th, 1873, U.S. patent number. ASR's 139,121 was filed in San Francisco. The riveted denim work pant, what we now call blue jeans, was born in this city, built out of a mining camp problem and an immigrant's practical eye. The first Levi's factory opened on Battery Street in San Francisco. The garment that would become the most worn piece of clothing in human history started as a solution to torn pockets in the California goldfields. Not cowboys, not country music. A German immigrant and a Nevada tailor who needed to split a patent fee. While the miners were wearing out their new pants, they were also eating. And what they were eating is something San Francisco still does better than anywhere else on earth. Sourdough bread exists everywhere. France has it, Germany has it, ancient Egypt had it, but San Francisco sourdough is different. Scientifically, provably. There's measurably different. The strain of wild yeast and bacteria that lives in San Francisco's air, water, and flour produces a specific tang that cannot be exactly replicated anywhere else in the world. Scientists have tried. They have taken SF starter cultures to other cities, fed them the same flour, controlled the temperature. The bread comes out different. The city's own microbiome is in the bread. The story starts in 1849 when a French baker named Isidore Boudin arrived in San Francisco during the gold rush. He brought French baking technique with him, but the wild yeast in San Francisco, shaped by the Pacific fog, the Bay Air, the specific minerals in the local water, colonized his starter culture and made something new. Boudin adapted his method to what the local environment gave him. He didn't fight the wild yeast. He used it. Boudin Bakery has been operating continuously since 1849. Their original starter culture, called the mother dough, is still alive today. It survived the 1906 earthquake and fire because a baker's wife carried it out in a bucket while the city burned around her. The sourdough bread you eat in San Francisco today is literally physically descended from gold rush dough. Same starter, same city. Over 175 years of continuous fermentation. The miners themselves were called sourdoughs. The bread and the people became the same word. That is not an accident. That is a city absorbing something so completely it becomes part of the identity. Now, here's the one that genuinely surprises people. Think about the fortune cookie. The little folded cookie that arrives at the end of a Chinese meal with a paper message inside. You have eaten one. Now everyone has eaten one. And you have always assumed, because why wouldn't you, that it is Chinese. It is served in Chinese restaurants. It arrived with Chinese food. It must be from China. It is not from China. China did not have fortune cookies until American tourists started asking for them. The fortune cookie was almost certainly invented in San Francisco, and the strongest claim belongs to a Japanese-American man named Makoto Hagiwara. Hagiwara managed the Japanese tea garden inside Golden Gate Park, a beautiful traditional garden that still exists today. Around 1914, he began serving small folded wafer cookies with thank you notes inside to visitors of the garden. The cookies were based on a Japanese temple tradition called Sujura Senbei, thin folded crackers with fortunes inside, sold at shrines in Kyoto. Hagiwara adapted the concept for his San Francisco garden. Chinese-owned restaurants in San Francisco later picked up the cookie and began serving it with meals. It spread from there across America. But here's the part that makes people go quiet. The reason fortune cookies became associated with Chinese food specifically, and not Japanese food, is connected to World War II. When Japanese Americans were forcibly interned in 1942, their businesses, restaurants, and food traditions were left behind or taken over. Chinese American businesses filled the gap. The fortune cookie, a Japanese-American invention made in a San Francisco park, became Chinese restaurant iconography through one of the darkest chapters in American history. In 1983, a San Francisco federal court held what it called a court of historical review, a mock trial, to settle the debate between San Francisco and Los Angeles over who invented the fortune cookie. San Francisco won. The judge ruled in the city's favor. The gavel came down. The world's most recognizable Chinese restaurant dessert was invented by a Japanese man in a San Francisco public park. That is not irony. That is just San Francisco. San Francisco's hills are beautiful. They are also a serious engineering problem. In the 1860s and early 1870s, the city was expanding rapidly, but horses couldn't reliably pull carriages up the steep grades. The hills that made the city dramatic also made it dangerous. Horse-drawn vehicles sliding backwards on wet cobblestones were a regular occurrence. Horses were dying. Andrew Halliday was a Scottish-born engineer who had made his name manufacturing wire rope, the thick, strong cable used in mining operations. In 1869, he witnessed a horse-drawn streetcar slide backwards down a hill on a rainy day. The horses couldn't hold it. Several were killed. Halliday decided the problem needed a different solution entirely. His idea: instead of horses pulling cars up the hill, run a continuous underground cable through a slot in the street, moving at a constant speed. A grip operator on each car could clamp onto the moving cable to go and release it to stop. No horses, no engine on the vehicle itself. Just a moving cable underground and a mechanical grip to grab it. On August 2, 1873, the first cable car ran down Clay Street in San Francisco. People gathered to watch. Many expected it to fail. It didn't fail. It worked perfectly, and within a decade, cable car lines were running across the city, opening up neighborhoods on the hills that had been too steep to develop. The cable car wasn't built because someone wanted to build something clever. It was built because San Francisco's geography made every other solution useless. The city's hills forced a new kind of thinking. The result was a transit system that no other city in the world had needed before, and that San Francisco still runs today, still using Halliday's basic mechanism, still climbing the same hills. In 1969, a man named Donald Fisher couldn't find a pair of jeans that fit him. He went to a department store. The selection was poor, the service was worse. Fisher was frustrated. His wife, Doris, had a background in finance. Together they had a simple idea: open a store that sold just Levi's jeans and music records, two things young people in San Francisco actually wanted, in one place. They called the store The Gap. The name referred to the generation gap, the cultural distance between the counterculture generation and their parents. They opened their first location on Ocean Avenue in San Francisco in 1969, right in the middle of the city's post-Summer of Love energy. The Gap didn't just sell jeans, it invented a new way of shopping. Before The Gap, Americans bought clothes at department stores, massive, overwhelming places where clothing was one section among 50. The Gap was a focused, accessible, identity-driven retail experience. You went there because of who you were, or who you wanted to be. The store sold a feeling as much as a product. From that one San Francisco location, The Gap grew into one of the largest clothing retailers in the world. What started as a store selling Levi's, also invented in San Francisco, became the template for modern fashion retail. Two of the most influential American clothing brands born in the same city a century apart. One from the Gold Rush, one from the Summer of Love. Both from the same restless, practical, who cares about the rules energy that San Francisco kept producing. In 2008, two designers in San Francisco couldn't pay their rent. A design conference was coming to the city, hotels were full, and Joe Gebbe and Brian Chesky had a spare room and some inflatable air mattresses. They put up a simple website offering air bed and breakfast. 3 people paid to sleep on their floor. That was Airbnb. The following year, neither Travis Kalanick and Garrett Kemp couldn't get a taxi home on a cold San Francisco night. The city's cab system was notoriously unreliable. Their frustration became Uber, launched in 2009. Lyft grew out of a San Francisco to Los Angeles rideshare project a few years later. 3 companies that reshaped how the entire world moves and sleeps, all born from the specific dysfunctions of one overpriced, underserved city. San Francisco's broken taxi system and impossible rent didn't just inconvenience people. They produced billion-dollar solutions. And then, in 2006, a side project at a failing podcast startup called Odeo became Twitter, a tool built to send short internal messages that accidentally became the global public square. Twitter wasn't designed to change political discourse. It was a small internal experiment that got loose. That is the San Francisco pattern, repeated across 175 years, genes from a torn pocket, bred from a gold rush starter culture, a transit system from dead horses on a hill, a global platform from a company that was about to go out of business. San Francisco didn't set out to change the world. It just kept running out of options and finding better ones.